There's no denying the power that music can have on us and our emotions. We've all experienced how music can make us feel very strong emotions, can make us happy, make us sad, make us contemplative. And this effect and power of music has not been lost on people of history, either in antiquity or in the Middle Ages. And for that reason, many different spiritual and religious traditions from around the world have used music in various ways as a tool for spiritual development. There is a kind of inherent spirituality in music that has been employed by people of all kinds of cultures and religions in history. Among them is the Sufis, which is what is usually referred to as Islamic mystics, right? They are Muslims of history that have focused on practices of inner purification. It's known in Arabic as Tasawwuf. And the Sufis have very strong, both practical and theoretical, ideas about music and its effects, its role in the metaphysical and cosmological scheme of reality, which are all very, very fascinating. The power of music was realized basically universally, both by its supporters and detractors. We see how many of the early Islamic philosophers wrote many works on music and often connected it to various cosmological and metaphysical ideas. Thinkers like Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and Ibn Sina loved music. They realized the medical and therapeutic use of music and often employed it as treatment for various physical and mental ailments, a point often pointed out by these Sufi writers to argue for its permissibility and use. Music is harmony and is strongly connected to mathematics and the spheres of the heavens, according to these philosophers. There's a great section in the Epistle of the Ikhwan al-Safa, the Brethren of Purity, who write that, quote, "You should know, dear brother, may God aid you and us with the spirit of his, that in every manual craft the matter or hayula dealt with consists of naturally occurring material, and that all its products are physical forms. The exception is music, for the matter it deals with consists entirely of spiritual substances, namely, the souls of those who listen to it. The musician is he or she who shapes and works with the souls of other human beings and animals." They also write, quote, "The tones produced by the movements of the musician reminds the individual souls that are in the world of generation and corruption of the joy of the world of the celestial spheres, just as the tones produced by the movements of the celestial spheres and the heavenly bodies remind the souls that are there of the joy of the world of spirits. In other words, the harmony and beauty of music reminds the soul of the harmony and beauty of the celestial world and the divine realm." And many Sufis would echo similar sentiments. In the Risala of Qushayriyya, he retells a story, quote, "I heard Al-Junayd say when someone asked him, 'Why is a man usually quiet but becomes agitated when he hears music?' He, Junayd, answered, 'God Most High addressed disembodied human souls during the primordial act, saying, "Am I not your Lord?" They answered, "Yes, we testify," and the spirits of human beings fully absorb the sound of these words, so whenever they listen to music, the remembrance of that original act of hearing agitates them." Here, Junayd is connecting the listening to and effects of music with Quranic principles. The primordial covenant when God creates the world and asks, "Am I not your Lord?" becomes the original music of our spiritual origin. And any time we hear beautiful music in the sensible world, we are reminded of this original foundation. This idea of music as remembrance, a form of dhikr, becomes a recurring theme. In Rumi's masterwork of poetry, the Masnavi, he opens the entire thing with the poem that has become known as the Song of the Reed. "Listen to the reed and the tale it tells, how it sings of separation. Ever since they cut me from the reed bed, my wail has caused men and women to weep. I want a heart that is torn open with longing, so that I might share the pain of this love. Whoever has been parted from his source longs to return to that state of union." These are just the opening lines, but it already indicates the meaning. Rumi is talking about the wailing or sound of the reed flute, the ney, which has been an important instrument and symbol in Sufi music, and how this sad yet beautiful sound is a metaphor for the longing of the human soul to return to its source in God. When the person hears the melodies of the ney, that melody mirrors the longing of the soul and pushes it towards its desire for union. There's also a great story involving Ali ibn Abi Talib. This story tells of how the Prophet Muhammad once told Ali the most exalted and deepest secrets of reality in confidence and made Ali promise to never tell another person this secret. Ali was true to his word, but this secret was so amazing that he could not contain himself. He just couldn't keep it inside. So he went in secret to a little lake and whispered the secret into the reed bed, which absorbed it into its own being. So when we hear the beautiful music of the ney, the reed flute, we are in some way hearing that secret that the Prophet told Ali. I just love this story. And the sound of the instrument also becomes a metaphor for another aspect of the human condition and the relationship between God and creation. Just as the ney requires the player to blow into it to give it life, and the drum requires a hand that caresses it, or a lute needs fingers that pluck it, so human beings, or anything in creation, is constantly given life by the breath of God. We are the sounds and instruments played by God. If we want to find poetic utterances about sama and music and its symbolic metaphysical function, there is a lot of stuff to draw from. We already saw the earlier examples from Ibn al-Farid and al-Shushtari, and Rumi is an especially great point of reference. In another poem, he writes, quote, "The wise men tell us that we take these tunes from the turning of celestial spheres. These sounds are revolutions of the skies that man composes with his lyre and throat. We all were parts of Adam at one time. In paradise we all have heard these tunes. Though clay and water fill us up with doubts, we still remember something of those songs." And so, like food, sama sustains God's lovers within its harmonies. The mind's composed imagination draws its inspiration, takes its shape within this hue and cry. The huge importance and love Rumi shows towards sama is apparent not only in the poetry itself, but in the practice of sama as it developed in the Mevlevi order, characterized by the whirling motion that he was taught by Shams at-Tabrizi, and the above poem mentions how the music and movement of the whirling dervish mirrors the turning of the heavens and the spheres. In many of these poems and descriptions, music becomes an essential component of reality and creation. Rumi, again, here provides one of the most beautiful visions of reality and creation I can think of. Much like Junaid, he views the originating moment when God asks, "Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord?" as essentially a musical one. These words are a musical sound, a melody to which non-being responds by beginning to dance, to whirl, and from this dance is created all of the universe. Every atom, every galaxy, every flower and animal, all of them come to be and move in a constant dance to the melody of the divine creative music. It's absolutely breathtaking imagery. And here, the earthly sama or music becomes a micro version of the most essential movements of the universe itself, a mirroring of the divine order. In the greatest sheikh, the Andalusian Ibn Arabi, we get a similar idea. He conceives of the creation and continuous maintaining of the world as a relationship of speaking and hearing or listening. The originating command, kun, or be, is a kind of sound or speech, a nonsensible one of course, to which creation responds by listening. He refers to this as as-sama al-mutlaq, absolute sama, and he sees it as an essential part of how reality works. This sama isn't musical, as in the case of Rumi, but sensible music can be seen as a part or mode of this wider absolute listening. And Ibn Arabi, in general, is very important for our next point or perspective on these spiritual and metaphysical aspects of music. The main philosophical or theological position that Ibn Arabi and his followers are associated with is the doctrine of wahdat al-wujud, or the unity or oneness of being. Ibn Arabi himself never used this term, but it became a very influential theoretical expression of Sufi metaphysics around the world after him. In the so-called unity of being, Ibn Arabi essentially argues that there is only one reality, reality itself, or al-Haq, which is God. God, or the One, is all there is, and everything, quote, other than God is simply non-being. Based on the Hadith Qudsi that states, "I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known, so I created the world that I might be known," he sees all of creation as the continuous self-disclosure or manifestation of God's infinite attributes, like in a mirror. Everything we see, everything we experience, is a mirror showing a particular reflection of God's attributes, like the colors of the rainbow being an illusory diversity hiding the inner unity of the white light. Thus, there is nothing but God, according to Ibn Arabi, but God is also utterly transcendent and different from the world. The world is God and not God, huwa la huwa. All existence in itself is God because God is being itself and there is only one being, and all multiplicity is a refraction or projection of his infinite oneness into a multiplicity that reflects him back at himself in a limited form. This is a very simplified explanation, and if you want to know more about Ibn Arabi and his doctrine, I suggest you watch my full video on that topic. What is important for us here is the idea that all things are reflections of God's attributes, so that there is, quote, nothing which is not an aspect of God, or in which God can be contemplated or experienced in an indirect form. When God is experienced, the mystic realizes that there is only one experiencer experiencing himself in a mirror, and duality then falls apart. As the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart said, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." Or, in Ibn Arabi's own words, quote, "He is a mirror for your vision of yourself, and you are his mirror for his vision of the names or attributes, which are none other than himself and the manifestation of their determinations." But what does this have to do with music? Well, music is a thing that you experience, after all, and so I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this, but let's go even deeper than that. When the very famous philosopher Ibn Sina, or Avicenna, wrote about beauty, what beauty itself is, he followed in the line of Aristotle. In his Risalat fil Ishq, the treatise on love, he essentially defines beauty as that which is harmonious. Quote, "Both the rational and the animal soul, the latter by reason of its proximity to the former, invariably love what has beauty of order, composition, and harmony, as for example harmonious sounds, harmoniously blended tastes of well-prepared dishes, and such like. It recognizes that the closer a thing is to the first object of love, the more steadfast it is in its order, and the more beautiful in its harmony, and that what follows it results therefrom, vis-a-vis harmony and agreement. Whereas on the contrary, the more remote a thing is from it, the nearer is it to multiplicity and such characteristics as follow it, contrast and disharmony. Beauty results from harmony, and harmony is associated with oneness, thus closer to God, whereas disharmony is multiplicity. And what is music if not harmony? Thus, we have found a theoretical foundation for why music is beautiful. Music is harmony, and thus music is beauty. But to thinkers like Ibn Arabi, there is only one beauty. God is the beautiful, not just in the sense that he has that quality, but in the sense that he is beauty, essentially. There is no beauty but him, just as there is no reality but him. All beauty or harmony that we experience in the world is but a tiny reflection of beauty itself, God. So now we have taken this as far as it can possibly go. Based on the ideas of Ibn Arabi and Wahdat al-Wujud, music is no longer just a reminder of higher realities or the human soul's origin in the divine womb. No longer is it just a beautiful metaphor for the creation of the world. Now, to experience the beauty of music in an act of sama is to experience God himself. It is to experience the absolute in itself. Not fully, of course, but a glimpse of the divine reality, and thus a glimpse into one's own most inner essence and identity. Try thinking of that next time you hear a good song. To finish off, it would be a disservice if we didn't also discuss the 20th century Sufi figure Inayat Khan, a master of the Chishti order from India and an accomplished musician himself. Inayat Khan was one of the first and most important Sufis to travel to the West and introduce the tradition here. He did so through lectures and musical concerts, and in those lectures he would often talk about the importance of and exalted nature of music and sound. There is even a book based on those lectures and writings called The Mysticism of Sound and Music, which deals exclusively with this topic. In this book, Khan picks up on many of the ideas that had already been discussed by earlier Sufis, but also expanded the theoretical and cosmological significance of music. He also wasn't afraid to incorporate teachings on music from other religious traditions like Hinduism, universalist in scope as he was. He mirrors the theory based on the unity of being by saying, quote, "Music is nothing less than the picture of the beloved." And based on earlier precedent as well as more up-to-date scientific theories of his time, he argues that the whole world is essentially music. Quote, "Music is the beginning and end of the universe. All actions and movements made in the visible and invisible world are musical, that is, they are made up of vibrations. Creation begins with the activity of consciousness, which may be called vibration, and every vibration starting its original source is the same, differing only in its tone and rhythm caused by a greater or lesser degree of force behind it." Inayat Khan argues that at its deepest level, the universe is made up of vibration, and music and sound is, after all, just that, vibrations. So the universe is just a large, elaborate musical composition, with harmony in the movements of the heavens and the way everything is intricately structured, rhythm in the way that we move, for example, we can't walk without rhythm, and in the workings of things. Music is all around us. We can find rhythm in basically anything, and we can see harmony in every corner of the universe. Today, the scientific theory known as string theory is one of the most popular for explaining the most inner workings of the universe, in which everything is thought of as vibrating strings, like on a guitar. The ideas being put forth by Inayat Khan are not that far off from this. Quote, "When we pay attention to nature's music, we find that everything on the earth contributes to its harmony. The trees joyously wave their branches in rhythm with the wind, the sound of the sea, the murmuring of the breeze, the whistling of the wind through the rocks, hills, and mountains, the flash of the lightning and the crash of the thunder, the harmony of the sun and the moon, the movements of the stars and planets, the blossoming of the flower, the fading of the leaf, the regular alternation of morning, noon, and night, all reveal to the seer the music of nature." So clearly there are many ways that one can view music from a theoretical perspective, and I've only gone through a few examples here. But it does show you some perspectives on the spirituality of music, at least according to the Sufis or Islamic mystics. And maybe it can even give us a look into the role that music can play, both on an individual spiritual level for the individual person, but perhaps also as a foundational aspect of reality itself. I'll see you next time.